I have a complex relationship with the character of Rose because the fact that she has a lot of flaws is what makes her incredibly interesting. Her complicated relationship with the Doctor, and the fact that even though they do get on, they are in a weird way using each other to help with their own personal traumas, which is not a healthy relationship to have. But over time, at least across the first season, you do get the sense that this is very much intentional and they're supposed to grow out of these issues and learn to have a healthier dynamic. I think it helps early on that Rose's more negative behaviour is somewhat sympathetic. She does become quite selfish at points, but you can often understand why she is going that route. Of course she'd want to save her deceased father. Of course she would struggle to cope with the same level of trauma that her mother and Mickey have at her long absence. Of course she'd want to run away from a very dead-end job in search of adventure. The main issue for me is that I don't feel like the 10th Doctor and Rose's relationship actually improves. If anything, it gets unhealthier. Some of this is a little bit of an accident, like the ending of The Idiot's Lantern, but it's clear that they start to develop issues such as dependency and detachment from the people around them, and when faced with the possibility of not being together, it results in them becoming quite aggressive and even violent. It paints their relationship as less as love and more obsession, even an addiction, which is why I think the wisest thing for them to do was to separate. I think I'd argue characters like Martha and Donna are more essential to the 10th Doctor's stability and mental health than Rose is. She seems to develop very negative attitudes and a degree of entitlement that she is above an ordinary life and doesn't really have much regard for characters like Mickey and Jackie. It's quite heartbreaking to see. Initially, you could sympathise with her and recognise that she is not on the same level, but at this point, I think it becomes too unhealthy for me to root for. So I find this recent claim that Rose got a really tragic ending because she didn't end up with the quote-unquote real Doctor quite laughable. Realistically, they shouldn't be together at all, so this was a pretty satisfying compromise. And to undo it now, almost 20 years later, when the Doctor has certainly moved on, and if Rose hasn't made things work with him, it's really quite ridiculous. It just feels so retro-regressive. Not only do you remove a essential bit of maturity and humbling between the two characters, it also promotes incredibly toxic behaviour because it makes Rose seem manipulative. Some people have been even claiming that she kissed him to make the other Doctor jealous, and the weird dehumanising of the Meta-Crisis Doctor and trying to force him to be the Valeyard, even though that is not what the Valeyard is at all. I think a key aspect of the Russell era that goes a little unnoticed is the recurring theme of not being caught up in fantasy and learning to accept reality, even if it can sometimes be quite harsh or bittersweet. And for Rose in particular, an element of that is her relationship with her father and how she hoped saving him would ensure this happy life she never thought she could have otherwise, only to learn that even without all the issues with the Reapers destroying Earth, realistically him and Jackie wouldn't have worked out. And even when they do technically get together, they're already arguing on day one. So in a way, that relationship somewhat foreshadows the unhealthiness in the Doctor and Rose's, and ultimately shows that realistically the best case was for them to move on. Because she has basically everything she ever wanted. She's got her family back, she's got a pretty substantial job that gives her meaning at Torchwood, and an opportunity to spend the rest of her life with a version of the Doctor. The fact that some compromise had to be made is not that tragic.